I'm trying to put my mom to the exact opposite. I like my dad in the real time when I was super cheerleader. Seeing two people. I think that's the reason why I can make it so easy. There's a reason that opposites are supposed to attract. And there's sort of two romantics getting together on so easily.
Evening, President Congo. How's it going?
Everything's fine. How you doing?
Oh, good. Hanging in. So, yeah. Exactly.
Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, September the 23rd. This is the second meeting of City Council's Redistricting Committee. I am Trippy Congo, President of City Council, and also Chair of the Redistricting Committee. First, I would like to do a roll call for all of the Redistricting Committee members. Committee Member Darby.
Present.
Committee Member Oliver. Committee Member Oliver. Committee Member Harley.
Present.
Committee Member Cabrera. Committee Member Cabrera.
Present. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Committee Member Dixon.
Present.
And Committee Member Spadola.
Present.
Circle back to Committee Member Oliver. I would also like to acknowledge any other council members who are present. Council Member Gray.
Present, thank you.
Council Member Fields. Council Member Johnson.
Present.
Council Member Field. Council Member Field. Council Member Walsh. Council Member Walsh. And Council Member McCoy.
Here.
Thank you. Other panelists that are in attendance this evening, I'd like to acknowledge Chief of Staff Daniel Walker, also Marshall Bassanite, our Senior Legislative Advisor and CFO at City Council, Bob Goff, the City Solicitor, Zach Staparo, Assistant City Solicitor, Matt Harris Sr., who's Senior Planner, Anthony Albence from the State Election Commissioner, and Chris Ramos, Director of IT and Department of Elections. So as you all know, every 10 years, a census is taken of the population of the United States. And this is for all levels of government, from the federal level to the state and the county level down to the local level. When the census occurs, one of the things that the government must look at is whether or not the district boundaries of council districts need to be redrawn because of shifts or growth in population, which is referred to as redistricting. Per City Code Section 232, the Redistricting Committee is comprised of the President of City Council and 6 members appointed by the President of City Council. On July 21st, 2021, the following council members were appointed to the committee: Shanae Darby from the 2nd District, Xanthia Oliver from the 3rd District, Michelle Harley from the 4th District, Maria Cabrera, Rashima Dixon, and James Padola, all council members at large. The redistricting process is mandated in the City Code Charter. We have a robust agenda tonight, but Ms. Bassanite will share with us the committee redistricting process and responsibilities. Well, first, I would highly encourage all council to participate in this process, regardless if you are on the committee or not. And likewise, I strongly encourage the community to participate as well. For transparency, all of our redistricting meetings will be done in public, and there will not be any executive sessions of these meetings. All maps and information will be made accessible for the public to access on council's website at wilmingtoncitycouncil.com. Also, the information is available in the City Council office located on the 9th floor in the City County building. The meeting today will focus on the process, data, demographics, any preliminary proposals, and maps. Also, I would like to make aware to all committee members that all future meetings, that the committee members will need to be in council chambers. I believe that this will make the review of all the information that we have, that we are tasked to do, much, much easier. Ms. Bassanite, if you can please walk us through the redistricting process and responsibilities of this committee.
Yes. First of all, if WIT and if they can make Mr. Anthony a panelist. And if we can bring up the presentation, please. As the President Congo stated, per City Charter, Section 2102, when it comes to the City Council's Redistricting Committee, it's comprised of the President of Council and 6 members appointed by the President of Council, and it shall convene on or before July the 1st of the official reporting of the census numbers, and every 10th year after that. It shall be the mandatory duty of council to redistrict within 6 months after the publication. The state of Delaware received the census numbers on August 12th of 2021. And council must complete the redistricting process no later than February 3rd, 2022. If we can please forward the slides. Per City Charter, Section 2102, there shall be 8 councilmanic districts, each comprising as nearly as possible as a equal number as possible. The ideal number based upon our population. I'm sorry, somebody's phone is ringing. Our total population for 2020 per the 2020 census is 70,898. Can we please forward to the next slide? Can we forward to the next slides, please? While WITN is forwarding to the next slides. So the city population is 70,898. If you take the 70,898 and you divide it by 8, the ideal population would be 8,862. Per the code, Section 2-32, 10% is required, but when you talk about 10%, you're talking about it in aggregate. So really, it is recommended based upon previous processes that the district population cannot be more than 5% smaller or 5% larger. So 5% smaller will equate to 8,419, or 5% larger than the ideal number will be 9,305. If we can please forward 2 more slides over, please.
And while we are forwarding on the slide, I want to remind everyone to please mute your phones. Everyone, please mute your phones. Thank you.
If you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this chart here is a chart of the Wilmington 2020 census population. As I mentioned, we see the total population of 70,898. We see the ideal population. If you look at the items, the districts that are highlighted in yellow, those particular districts are either over or under, which is district number 3, district number 4, and district number 7. Next slide, please. This slide here is the Wilmington population of 70,898, but this here also includes Senate Bill 171, meaning if we count the population of the inmates as far as their last known address. And if that is factored in, then the population would be 70,569. If you take the 70,569, you divide that by 8, then the ideal population would be 8,821. The 5% over that number would equate to 9,262, and the minimum would be 9,380. And once again, if you look at the numbers to the far right, as far as the percentage, you will see the districts that would be over or under that threshold, which once again would be the 3rd district, the 4th district, and the 7th district.
Councilmember Gray, did you have a question?
Yes, in the calculations going across, there seems to be 330 missing prisoners.
And yes, Councilwoman Gray, and we'll get to that further on down the on the agenda items. That'll be something that the Department of Elections will talk to.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Per the City Code, Section 232, the Redistricting Committee shall prepare and file a report with the City Clerk containing a recommended plan for adjusting the district boundaries. The report of the committee shall include a map, a description of each of the districts, and it shall be in the form of a proposed ordinance. As filed with the City Clerk, the report in the ordinance form will be in the form of an ordinance and will be introduced by any council member at the next immediate meeting of council. So once again, that is the process. Once the final proposal is done, it will be in the form of an ordinance when we mention the word report. Next slide, please. Per City Code Section 232, the committee shall conduct at least one public hearing, which we shall advertise in the newspaper, because we want to make sure that the public is involved, because the public must be given the opportunity to comment on the committee report, any proposed changes to any of the district boundaries before the ordinance is scheduled for 3rd and final. Next slide, please. Per City Charter, Section 2102, should council fail to redistrict the city within the 6 months following the publication, and council shall not receive any further salaries until council have passed and the mayor shall have approved a redistricting ordinance. From looking at the calendar, that date will be February 3rd, 2022. But based upon our last redistricting committee meeting, we said we was going to try to get it done no later than January. Next slide, please. The upcoming redistricting committee dates is October the 28th, November the 22nd. And as President Congo mentioned earlier in his opening comments, it is the plan for the members of the committee to be here in the chambers, and the meeting will be made available via Zoom for the public and other members. There's also a dedicated page on the council website for redistricting. We want to make sure that we're very transparent, to make sure all the data, charts, and maps is available to the public. And it's also available in the city council office. Next slide, please. I realize that this chart here is hard to see, but this information is uploaded in a more of a readable format. Just wanted to share with the council what happened in 2001 and what it looked like for 2010. Next slide, please. Once again, this slide here is the 2020 population, the 70,898. It talks about the deviation, the percentage of the demographics: white, Black, American Indian, Asian, Hawaiian, other, Hispanic. So this information is also available in a readable format on our website as well. Next slide. In addition, the demographics also talk about the party affiliations. That information is available. And once again, this data was provided by the Department of Elections. I just uploaded, so we have it as a point of reference. Next slide, please. One of the items that should be considered for the committee, which was shared by the Department of Elections, is as we're looking at things, the map lines should best correspond to census blocks lines. And breaking up any census blocks could possibly have a down the line impact, such as perhaps creation of additional election districts if some district lines cannot be correlated to Newcastle County Council or the State House and Senate lines. So we just want to mention that as a point of reference. Next slide, please. Inmates' last known address. Just wanted to mention that the redistricting committee needs to make some type of formal motion regarding whether or not inmates' last known address will be used, or if you would keep the inmates listed at the prison facility. So that will require an action of the council. Now I'm going to turn it back over to the president unless there's any questions.
Yes, Councilmember Fields, Brigida Fields.
Thank
I would
you.
also, I'm sorry, I would also like to recognize Councilman Nathan Field, who has joined us. Councilwoman Fields.
Yes, my question is, how do we know that these prison inmates are registered voters?
And once again, we'll get to the inmates further on down the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, but that was my question also. It was about the inmates, so I'll wait until we get to that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
I have a similar follow-up in regards to voting records. Is there a way that we can, with all this data, are we going to be able to do an overlay with registered voters? Because I certainly get population, but if they're not able to vote, then we need to make sure they get registered to vote or somehow make that work. So I just had that same question. That's all.
Okay, thank you. At this time on the agenda, we're going to have a discussion about what Ms. Bassanite just touched on, utilizing the inmate's last known address. And as she also mentioned, this committee will need to make a formal motion on whether or not we're going to use that address or the address at the prison location. Council Committee Member Darby, do you have draft legislation that requires that incarcerated city residents be counted at their last known address that you would like to speak to?
Yes, I do. In this platform, would you like me to read the legislation or more just talk about it? How would y'all like me to go about that?
Just high level.
Okay. So we all know about SB 171, which is a state legislation that counts incarcerated people by their last known address. This is a movement happening across the country where people are trying to, are looking at prison gerrymandering, where counting prisoners in location distorts political representation, where they're not a part of the population and have no representation. So just like the state does, I believe we should follow it. We don't want to double count. If the state is counting someone, I don't know, I'm just making in the second district, but then we end up counting them in the fourth district, that's double counting. And it's just a legal liability on this issue. The federal judge actually held that prison gerrymandering was unconstitutional. So there are some legal ramifications with this, and we should follow what the state is doing. So like, that's like a summary of it.
Okay, thank you, committee member. Councilmember Gray, did you have a question?
Now, I would like to comment on several things, and I have several questions. The thing about the prisoners being registered voters, them being counted now where they are incarcerated, I don't think whether they're registered to vote or not has been taken into consideration. It never has been. I don't think that's the point. The people counted by the census are not counted by whether they're registered to vote. I mean, that may be a parameter, but you're still counted in the census, even if you're not registered to vote. So I'm not understanding why that's a factor as to whether we count these individuals in specific districts or not. My other thing is that SB 171 is a law, and the city cannot usurp state law. So I'm not understanding why we would need an ordinance to follow state law. By law, we have to follow state law. So I need some legal opinion that states why we are having to pass an ordinance in order to follow the state law.
Councilwoman Gray, Chief of Staff Walker is going to answer that question. He has his hand up.
Thank you. One other thing, the prisons are state prisons, even though they're in the city. So they are state facilities, and the state's saying, this is what we're going to do. You count them by their last known address. Okay, Mr. Walker, thank you.
Hi, Daniel Walker, Chief of Staff for City Council. Councilwoman Gray, to your question around the need for a specific Wilmington ordinance, Senate Bill 171 specifically speaks to the General Assembly's redistricting process, and it does not have any merit on what the individual municipalities are able to do. And as such, each municipality has to decide individually on how they will handle incarcerated inmates during their redistricting process.
Thank you. But even though they are state facilities and the state is saying this is how the state facility is to be handled, how their population is to be handled.
That is correct, even though they are state facilities.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief of Staff. Committee member Darby.
I also want to point that registration, them being registered to vote doesn't matter in this conversation. They serve an average of 2.6 years and aren't generally from the community encompassing the prison. State law only applies to General Assembly, not to local, so that is true. But them being able to vote or not has nothing to do with prison gerrymandering, where there's large chunks of population of people who are incarcerated being counted in populations that they don't even participate in regards to anything, because they can't vote, they can't participate, and they're not represented by that council person.
Okay, thank you. Chief of Staff, do you still have your hand raised? Do you have more comments?
No, my hand lower will not work, but
Okay.
I'm all good, Mr. President.
All right, just making sure. Thank you. Council Committee Member Harley.
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, so I would like to hear the synopsis of that legislation. I think it probably will offer more clarification for me because I'm not quite sure why it's being introduced or the intent. I'm just saying I don't know. So if that's possible, Mr. Chair, can I hear the synopsis of that legislation, please?
Yes, you may. Committee Member Darby?
Yeah, I have to bring it up on my phone.
While she's bringing it up, did you want me to read it?
Yes, Committee Member Darby, if it's okay, Marshall will read it.
Okay,
She has it available.
yeah.
Okay, this ordinance amends Chapter 2 of the City Code to require the City Council and its redistricting committee to count incarcerated individuals in state of Delaware or federal correctional facilities at their last known addresses before incarceration for redistricting purposes. If such individuals were residents of the City of Wilmington immediately before the respective dates of incarceration, this requirement applies to every future redistricting, beginning with the redistricting that occurs as a result of the federal decennial census of 2020. Finally, a housekeeping matter, this ordinance deletes current City Code Section 2-32.1 regarding the Census 2000 Complete Count Committee because it's obsolete.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. President, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so are we voting on this legislation tonight or does this go to committee?
Mr. President, this ordinance is just for discussion. It has not been introduced yet. It's my understanding that Councilwoman Darby just wanted to share this because it's something to work in process. So this ordinance has not been introduced yet. It's for discussion purposes.
And I have one last follow-up, Mr. President.
Yes.
So we don't have, so if this is just for awareness, and if it's going to a committee, that will be the time for us to discuss this in more detail. Was that the purpose? Just to introduce, just to share the information, but it's going to committee where we can discuss it in more detail. That's my question.
That's my understanding for the purpose of her legislation. But I don't want to speak for Councilwoman Darby.
Councilwoman Darby, did you have any other further comments? Did you want to respond?
No, Council President. I do have a question. Is there time for public comment?
Yes, public comment is towards the end of the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President?
Yes, Committee Member Harley.
Yes, so this legislation should be discussed once it goes to committee. And so that's pretty much why I brought it up, first of all, to try to understand the intent and purpose of it and trying to figure out how did it fit in to what we're talking about today. And I think that we should hold our comments until it's at least introduced within council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Marshall, Fast Night.
President Congo, one of the things I just want to mention to the committee is as we're doing the numbers, the current 2020 census numbers do not factor in the inmate's last known address. So as Department of Elections is preparing different scenarios, they have to do two different scenarios, one with the 2020 census as well as to factor out the inmate's last known address until this body of this redistricting committee makes a motion to determine which way they like to go. So I just want to mention that for the record.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had asked about the 330 prisoners missing in the count, and they said, I think they said it was going to be addressed while we were discussing prisoners.
Yes, that'll be further down the line when the Department of Elections be speaking.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Committee Member Harley, is your hand still raised? Do you have further comment?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, Councilman Johnson.
Yes, I was just doing some because I was not aware of this legislation. I was just doing some research real quickly, and it looks like there's already a House Bill 384 from 2010, which is the last census. So I'm not sure how that intertwines with the new Senate bill. So I just have some legal questions on whether we even need to act. Similar to, I think, what it was addressed earlier, and I don't know if law department looked into it yet, or will council possibly have our own attorneys look at it, but I think there's a question of whether we even have to do this. So I just wanted to see if that could be answered, at least from somebody who's looking at the legislative history.
And we do have Zach on the line from the Law Department.
Yeah, so the city solicitor has authorized me to speak on the inmate question as far as, it being a policy decision for the committee. As far as further discussion, we have not addressed that.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
Mr. President, I'm present.
Okay, thank you.
And also, as we're going down to different agenda items, Mr. President, if the public wants to speak on something, they can on each agenda item as well. I just want to mention that because there was someone from the public.
Okay, all right, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Give me 1 second, council members. I do see that we have someone from the public, so I want them to have an opportunity to speak. Mr. Donald Farrell, are you still with us?
I am.
All right, thank you for joining us.
Yes. And I want to thank you for having this conversation, because I have had this same question for a long time. And as far as counting the folks, I've always wondered if the prisoners, or if the inmates, who have not been adjudicated yet, but are incarcerated, awaiting trial, when it comes time to vote, are they eligible to vote? Can they be registered to vote? If so, do we count their vote where they are incarcerated, awaiting trial, but not convicted yet? Or what address do we use? That's my question.
Mr.
Okay, thank you very much. Miss Council Member, Committee Member Dixon, Council Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just had a quick question in regards to, I know a motion has to be made in regards to if we're going to include inmates into our count as a redistricting committee. Would that have any effect on the legislation that's being proposed?
Michelle?
And that'll be a question for Zach.
I'm sorry, council member, could you repeat that?
Yes, Zach, I absolutely can. I was just wondering if if we have to make a motion as far as a redistricting committee in regards to including inmates into our count, would that motion affect the current legislation that's being presented?
So just to make sure, if I follow, I took Marcelle's comment to be that the legislation would go to city council first and then be sent to this committee. At that time, the parliamentarian procedures would apply At this point, it was just being discussed. If I was that correct? Was I following your question?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Marshall, please.
Just to clarify, the question is, per existing code and policy language, the redistricting committee can make a motion regarding the inmate's last known address. And Councilwoman Dixon's question is, once the legislation is done by Councilwoman Darby, does that impact the recommendation, the motion that will be made this evening by this committee?
Yeah, so based on my understanding, that motion as part of parliamentarian procedure would occur at the time when it's brought to the committee.
So, Mr. President,
Just real quick, just before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I would like if Mr. Ramos or Mr. Albans can speak to the question from the public that Mr. Donald Farrell asked.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that, Mr. President. Excuse me. Good evening. This is Anthony Albans, Department of Elections. The question that was asked, I don't know that, and I will defer to your counsel there because I am not an attorney, but I don't know that connects directly with the provisions of SB 171 as it was enacted. That only speaks to counting of individuals who are incarcerated, and it only speaks generally to those folks who are in correctional facilities, not anything regarding the nature of those who are there. But that's how that legislation is drafted, and those are based. The numbers that we are using are the numbers basically the Department of Correction themselves reported to the Census Bureau, and then and analyzing those. So that's I don't know if Mr. Staparo there wanted to comment legally. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I preface everything that I say with that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to refer to our Chief of Staff, Daniel Walker.
Hi, Mr. President. This is Daniel Walker, Chief of Staff. I want to just comment on Councilwoman Dixon's question as far as the motion from this committee to impact the legislation that will eventually be determined. The answer to that is absolutely no. The motion to consider inmates at their last known address put forth this redistricting committee would just dictate procedurally how the committee is going to handle and count the numbers. That it is still going to be up to the full body of council to vote on the proposed ordinance once it is introduced and goes through committee that was discussed from by Councilwoman Darby tonight. But in short, no. If the committee does vote to count incarcerated individuals at their last known address tonight, that does not impact the potential vote on the ordinance Councilwoman Darby has shared.
All right, thank you. Committee Member Dixon.
That answered it. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a mute point or anything based on our motion. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I think I have clarification, but I'm still kind of confused. Councilwoman Harley, and I think also Marshall has suggested that we save discussion of this until later. I'd like to know, when are we going to discuss it later? What committee meeting will this ordinance or be discussed at? And once it's discussed, then my understanding is the committee will vote on it, and then that will be part of the numbers that's submitted to council for a vote. Correct?
Right. Thank
Correct.
you. Our Chief of Staff, Daniel Walker.
Hi, Councilwoman Gray. The ordinance will be assigned to a committee at introduction. At this time, it does not fall neatly into one of our standing committees, so it is the prerogative of President Congo to either decide to do a committee of the whole or to assign it to a committee that we could have this discussion, for instance, like your committee, because it does have potential statewide impact. But that is done at introduction. And so unfortunately, I can't answer that exact question until this ordinance is introduced.
No, thank you. You've explained it. That's perfect. I just didn't know what committee we were discussing that we were going to discuss the ordinance at. And you've made it, you've clarified it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Committee member Dixon, is your hand still raised?
No,
My apologies.
that should be me.
Council member Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't catch the very beginning of it, but I too do say if we can just hold off on this discussion in reference to the inmates, because I think it's already in a bill that it is the last known. We discussed this at the last redistricting meeting, and it was to my understanding and from Dover that it is the last known inmate address, because I talked to several people. So it's like I said, it's because it's not a bill anyway. So I mean.
Okay, thank you. Committee member Harley.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is this: what currently, based on the work that we have already started on, are we focusing on current, if their current address? What is it right now from Department of Elections? The numbers that we have.
So you have your hand up for public comment.
Hello? Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Yes, so I just wanted to be clear on where we are today. And is it their current address, which means this was the address that they had before going into prison? That's the question that I have.
Okay, thank you. Can anyone from the Department of Elections speak to that?
Mr. President, Anthony Albans here again, Department of Elections. And any of the information that that's council staff has requested that we've passed on, we've been providing with both scenarios. If this were to be enacted, and that was at the request of staff. If this were to be enacted, or this legislation were to be enacted, or based upon it not being enacted. So you have two different scenarios in the information that you have to review, and we'll continue to do that certainly as long as that's the preference, unless and until this is passed, and then we can certainly change the approach as you prefer, or as the committee prefers.
Okay, thank you. I see that we do have another question from our public. Dwayne Bensing, are you still with us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My name is Dwayne Bensing. I'm with the ACLU of Delaware. I would like to thank Councilwoman Darby for introducing this piece of legislation. This is an issue that is very important to the ACLU of Delaware. I think I'd like to clarify a couple of points that I've heard made by a few of our council members about the applicability of state law. While it is true that Delaware, for purposes of redistricting, the state boundaries for representative districts and Senate districts has moved forward in such a way to make sure that the state does not engage in what's known as prison gerrymandering. The state law only applies to the General Assembly and does not apply to counties or municipalities. And so as you all endeavor in this important work of redistricting the city of Wilmington, it is important for you all to engage in the principles that are important about representative democracy when we're thinking about redistricting. And I encourage this council to do what the state of Delaware has done and reject prison gerrymandering, adopt Councilwoman Darby's approach, whether you do that in today's meeting or at another time. I encourage this commission to move forward with counting prisoners at their last known address. And that's because the prisoners lack an economic, social, and civic tie to the communities beyond the prison walls. This is not where these folks live and engage in the community. They live elsewhere beyond the prison walls. And that's where they should be counted, at their last known address. They're from those communities and they return to those communities after they finished their sentence, which on average is about 2.5 years, much less than the 10-year decennial redistricting process. So it's very important that the city follow this approach of avoiding prison gerrymandering and count folks at their last known address in correspondence with how the state and hopefully other counties and municipalities will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your input, Mr. Benson. Council Member Oliver.
Yes, thank you. As I stated, I missed the very beginning. I apologize. But we have Anthony on here. Anthony, could you clear this up? I thought from our last discussion, that whole hour discussion, I thought that's what was certified, that we are using the prisoner's last known address. I kept asking that question and I thought you said yes, and the guy from the Department of Elections said yes. Now, is there something different? I thought
Mr.
that
Evans.
was, Daniel, is that correct? Wasn't that certified the last meeting?
Mr. Evans, would you like to respond?
As I recall, it was discussed at the last meeting, but however, I don't think it was confirmed that that was definitely going to be your path forward. That there would have to be action to make sure it is applicable to the city council. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So I think that we, as a committee, since we have had the discussion on Committee Member Darby's, her proposed legislation, we do need to confirm so there is no misunderstanding of how we want to move forward with the prisoner's last known address or their current address in the prison. So I want to take a vote from the committee members on how we would like to move forward. Are we going to, I'd like to make a motion to include the prison population with their last known address.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to use the inmate's last known address for redistricting purposes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Committee Member Harley.
Yes, Mr. President, my question was, if you don't use, well, what's the difference between last known and current? I was assuming that we was using the last known, and if it's the last known before going into prison, that will be the current address. Like if you have an address before you go to prison, you're in prison. So what would be the current address other than the last known? Can someone answer that question?
Chief of Staff Daniel Walker, I see your hand raised.
Yes, Mr. President. Councilwoman Harley, if I understand your question correctly, the last known address would be the address that the Department of Corrections has on file for that particular inmate prior to them entering one of the facilities. The current address is that facility because they are actually counted at, for instance, Gander Hill or the Plummer House. And so the importance of the decision is to decide, are we going to say that that prison facility is their address versus their last known address, which would be the address that they had on file prior to incarceration. I hope that answered your question.
That was a perfect explanation. And I think, you hit it right on the spot. So I like the last known, and I'm good with it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Committee Member Darby, do you have any closing comments before we move to the next agenda item?
Council President, I just want to say thank you, colleagues, other council members for moving that motion. And let's just move forward and let's get to redistricting.
All right, thank you very much. So next on the agenda, we have a summary of the review maps. current 2010 boundaries with the 2020 census population by the Department of Elections, Mr. Anthony Alvin, State Election Commissioner, and Mr. Chris Ramos, Director of IT, Department of Elections.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can just start out. Really, this will be a very brief item. This is the same material that we had prepared, I think, for the prior meeting. And essentially, just to recap, what this is, we'd like to kind of call your baseline that you're starting with in your efforts. It shows the existing districts that were affirmed by the last redistricting committee after the 2010 census, and then uses your 2020 census population numbers as your starting point. And as we've mentioned again, we've operated under the direction of the council, staff supporting the committee, providing those different scenarios of populations, including those incarcerated either at the facilities or at that last known address, as we were just discussing, so you can have a sense of that. So those are kind of your baseline materials. And I know my understanding is from council staff that everyone has a copy of that or has been provided it, and I know they're available online. So we'll be happy to certainly could provide any additional information or answer questions that you have. But that's just more or less your starting off point for the process.
Thank you. Mr. Ramos, did you have any comments?
Good evening, Mr. President. So Commissioner Alvin's pretty much covered everything. I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Council Member Gray.
Okay, based on what's being said, I just wanted to make a statement. I think the purpose of redistricting is to adjust the boundaries of the 8 districts to reflect the shift in the population of Wilmington. And I have the least deviation of all the districts. So I'm just making a statement that I see no reason, because people have approached me, to move the boundary lines of the first district. I think I'm only deviated by 0.39%, including the prisoners. So I just wanted to make sure that was out there. Thank you. Oh, did anyone address the 330 prisoners missing yet?
That'll be the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So next on the agenda is the review of the census data charts from the Department of Elections.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I could start out with that, and I'll ask, with your indulgence, my colleague Chris Ramos perhaps to jump in if needed. And I believe, and if I may ask a question to Marshall as well, I believe, Marshall, this info was provided to everyone. This is a 6-page document that goes over the breakdown of the data on those incarcerated.
Yes, that was provided to all council. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Albans, just
Sure.
before you, hate to cut you off, just before you get started, I do see we have 2 questions from council members. First, we have Mr. Councilmember Field.
Yes. Well, I just have a quick comment that I wanted to make after hearing Councilmember Gray's comment. I'm not sure if this is it's a very simple comment. Maybe this is not the exact right time. I don't know, should I go ahead and just make it?
I'm sorry, it was kind of hard to understand you, council member.
Yeah, I just have a quick kind of follow-up comment related to what Councilmember Gray just mentioned.
Okay, sure.
My district also is within the 5% margin that, and I, just in terms of the 8th district, I don't see a need for any changes to be made to the border of mine, and I would be perfectly happy with that also. That's my comment.
Okay, all right. Thank you, council member. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, I just wanted just briefly on just the more of a Robert's rule question. This is for law department. I believe, and again, I'm just trying to look at my notes, but I believe I think we have to introduce during the general session that motion, and then we can refer it to committee. I'm not sure if we're permitted to vote right now, and that's just me, or at least my perception. Does anybody from law department have any insight on that, on whether we need to redo the motion?
So putting on my parliamentarian hat, I would say no. It's the committee is allowed by code to make that decision. It's more of a policy decision. And I took Chief of Staff Walker's point to be that these are two separate things that are that may have gotten commingled.
Okay, all right. All right, I just wanted to make sure we're following the rules, because I know this is not typical. We're not used to doing it this way. So I just wanted to make sure that the rules are followed, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Director Alvins, Commissioner
Thank
Alvins.
you. Thank you, Mr. President. Just jumping back to that six-page document entitled 2020 Redistricting City of Wilmington Statistics on Incarcerated Persons. I'll just walk through the basics on that, and that should answer some of the questions that have come up. And again, this is, we prepared this at the request of staff, again, envisioning if the council were to enact an ordinance enacting the provisions of Senate Bill 171. To give you an idea of where the numbers, how they would play out. This document at the first page, again, has all the institutions that are under the control of the Department of Correction from the state. The second and third pages of the document detail the number of individuals reported as being incarcerated by those facilities. You'll see there's two slightly different numbers here. Page 2 is the number of inmates reported by the Department of Correction to the U.S. Census. And page 3 has a very slight difference, if you'll notice, there's some variation. And that is the numbers that the census reported for those facilities in those respective census blocks. We do not have any reason as to why there was a difference. That's not information that we have any knowledge of why there's a slight difference. For the city of Wilmington in particular, the two facilities housed here in the city of Wilmington, for Howard R. Young, the numbers exactly match. And then there's only a 4-person difference at the Plummer Center. For some reason, the numbers reported by the Department of Correction were 4 lower than what was reported in the census. Again, we don't have a reason for that. We're not sure. But we did break down that detail on page 4, just so people have and again, that's for all facilities in the state. So you can see that, okay? There was a question, I believe it was Councilmember Gray had a question about a number of 300, or rather 350. Page 5 starts to break that down. And again, this is envisioning the provisions of that Senate bill, how they're laid out in that piece of legislation, that of the individuals who are incarcerated currently, there are a total of 3,765 who have a last known address in Delaware. There are 633 that do not. Either they listed their last known address before incarceration as being homeless or no fixed address. The address was somewhat incomplete. It couldn't be determined. It was a commercial address. For example, someone may be staying at a hotel temporarily because of a housing issue, or it was not a valid address that could not be resolved into a known Delaware address. And that was based on research that we undertook based on the data Department of Correction provided us. Now, the 350, that number, again, those are individuals who are out of state. They are not envisioned by that legislation as being assigned to their last known address because their last known address is outside of Delaware. So that gets us to that total 4748, and that 350, again, that they are to be deducted from that total of 4748. The rest of that page shows how those numbers play out at each of the facilities in the state, including the 2 in the city. And then you get to the last page of the document. What that shows is the breakdown of the individuals in each council district. And you see as well for Howard Young and for the Plummer Center, those numbers include both individuals who are in fact last known address is in that city council district, as well as those individuals from that facility for whom there could not be a last name address determined. Again, for all those reasons, either it was an incomplete address, it was somehow otherwise unintelligible for some reason. So those are how those individuals were assigned. So number 6 is really the breakdown of everyone in the city council districts. Again, also just want to remind everyone, or just bring it to everyone's attention, that the SB 171 legislation, when it envisioned individuals being assigned to their last known address, that also includes individuals who may be incarcerated in another correctional facility, not just the 2 in the city. If their last known address is in the city, they've been assigned to that here, and that this chart breaks that down. Okay, and again, just to circle back to the top, as I mentioned earlier, all the information that we've provided so far based on the request of council staff, again, has included both this breakdown as well as the breakdown of individuals not assigned to their last known address. Basically, again, envisioning either scenario that you as a committee or ultimately the council may adopt. So that is a breakdown of that document and how those numbers were arrived at. And that is hopefully answers some of the questions that were out there.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if any other follow-up comments by any council members or the public. I don't see any hands raised. Were you finished, Commissioner?
Yes, sir. I'm that's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. At this time, we're going to review some preliminary proposals and maps by different committee members. During this time, just want to remind everyone to please keep your phones on mute and to please use the hand raise icon. If your icon is not working, please just send a message to our chief of staff. He will make sure that the message gets to me, and then I will be able to acknowledge you. So please keep your phones on mute and please use the hand raise icon. Proposal number 1 is going to come from Committee Member Harley.
Yes, Mr. President. Before I ask Ms. Marshall to share the map, I wanted to just share some information first. I am happy to be able to present my first proposal, and I wanted to be clear that my goal, number 1, was to be compliant with no greater or less than the 5% of the 9,305 that we all are being charged to make sure that we are within that particular number, not having any impact on the census lines, focusing on not interrupting any more or new communities, not interrupting communities that are currently one and not divided between districts. And first and foremost, I focused on current district boundary lines. When you think about boundary lines, I looked at those particular areas first, where the boundary lines are within the 4th district, between the districts that are under the percentages, which is on the east side. The 4th district and the 3rd district, our boundary line is on 9th Street. And then the other boundary for the 4th district is the 5th district, which is on the west side. So on the west side, the boundary line is 8th Street. So again, my focus was starting at the boundary lines versus picking and choosing in between different communities, but starting at the boundary lines between both the 3rd and 4th and the 4th and the 5th. So at this time, Ms. Basnight, can you share the overall city map or my proposal? On my proposal, it shows the entire city map in addition to my proposal.
Okay, I'm going to ask Anthony or Chris if they can put up the map that's titled CMMH proposal number 1, the citywide map.
Thank you.
Yes, we are working on pulling that map right now.
Thank you. And as it has been stated, while Mr. Ramus is pulling up the map, this is proposal number 1. And again, starting with a common sense approach. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so what we're looking at here again is our entire 8 districts. We already heard the numbers, so I don't need to go over the numbers. What the magic numbers are, which is 8862 for all districts, and 5% would be the 9,305. So my first proposal, and as I shared, I started with the boundary lines between the 3rd and 4th. So if you could point at the blocks between Lombard and Locust. So the boundary line is on 9th Street between the 3rd and 4th. And as it has been mentioned, the 3rd district is below the number that is needed. And the 4th district is over a 19.02% over 2010. So the boundary line is 9th Street. And to not have too much impact, I literally started with short blocks of areas. So this particular area that you're looking at, starting at where the block says 101 and 88, that's actually Lombard Street right there. The red line is the boundary between the 3rd and the 4th, the 3rd being on the right, the 4th being to your left, and the line where you see 88, 90, 73, that's Taylor Street. And then the line on the bottom where it's 15 and 0, that's Locust Street. So those are that's the first block of the boundary between the 4th district and the 3rd district, shifting that block into the 3rd district. And again, that is Lombard to Locust, that is east and west, and Taylor to 9th is north and south. That's my first area to be compliant. And if you could, Mr. Ramus, move to the 5th district, that's right above, between the 4th and the 5th district is, I believe, okay, right there. So I already shared my common sense logic and analogy here, nothing, no rocket science. Here we are looking at Adams Street, where you see the 0, the 254. Let's talk about the red dotted line is the boundary. The long red dotted line is the boundary between the 4th and the 5th. The 4th being to the right, the 5th being to the left. Okay, so the red boundary line to the top of that square is Adams Street, and the bottom where it says 106, 125 is Orange Street, the westerly side of Orange Street. So between Adams and Orange, between 8th and 9th. And again, this is the boundary between the 4th and the 5th. And so this is my first proposal. I reached out to the council members as it related to what I had suggested, just to make them aware out of common courtesy, to let them know what my thoughts were, especially with their numbers being under and the 4th district being over. And again, just using a common sense approach. So that's my proposal and presentation, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Committee Member Harley. Do we have any comments or questions from anyone on the committee or in council? Council Member Spadola.
Thank you, Council President. This is not directly related to Councilmember Harley's map. I looked at all the maps and they're really tough to make out without the street names all over. Councilmember Darby's was the only one that was very clear. I don't know how how we could get these redone with all the street names, but it's just tough for myself and I'm sure the public to follow along without more street names on there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marshall Bassnight.
And yes, with that, we can get that information from the Department of Elections. The maps that were provided, I mean, that's what they provided to us. We also can get some hard copies that we can have available here in the building as well.
Thank you. Council Member Johnson.
So I would like to just commend Councilwoman Harley for at least doing this initial work, working with everyone. I know she's touched base with me as well about how to reconfigure the 7th. And I think it is a common sense approach. I think just the math approach makes sense. I know it's always hard. Nobody wants to lose certain blocks, but we all have to work as a city, and I think we'll find a common sense approach to get this done. So I know right now, with me, it's obviously working with the 8th district council person and also the 6th district council person to figure out, how we reconfigure the west side. So, I just commend Councilwoman Harley on this, and I know we have a lot more work to do, but this at least gives us a good start. And I agree. I think it would be good if we had the street name overlay once we get that out from DOE, so that we, when we flash it for the public, and next month's meeting, it's easier to understand where we're exactly going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Spadola, did you have another comment? I see your hand is still raised.
No, I just didn't lower. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Committee Member Darby.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I just want to share some thoughts I have about the map. One of the first things I went to a few webinars and workshops about redistricting, and one of the common practices is making sure that areas are compact. So compact means that district lines are more circlish or squarish, where it's not a lot of division or overlapping of many communities. So that would be one of my critiques, or some of the feedback that I would get is that it's not compact enough. And that's shown to create communities that are more cohesive, communities that are more of a common interest. And my other comment about the map is that I'm really interested in seeing a community of interest for me is East Side. So I'm really interested in seeing East Side not being represented by more than one representative. Historically, redistricting and redistricting has been used to divide Black and Brown communities, and lines are drawn to divide them, right? I don't know what happened 10, 20, 30, 40 years in Wilmington, but I know specifically historically in our country, lines are being drawn purposefully to divide communities. So I would love to see, for me, more of East Side, more into maybe the 3rd district, all of East Side, so that they're properly represented and they're not represented by 2 representatives. And then I think it's really hard for anyone who's representing the 4th district to have such a large developed area such as, and that gets a lot of focus, like the riverfront, and then to have the East Side. I think it's hard to find a balance to represent both. And that's just my personal opinion. So I really think East Side should not be divided. It is a community that is hurting, a community that needs a lot of TLC. And I do not think it should be divided. So that's just my opinion. Map drawing is hard. So I know, Councilwoman Harley, I know you put a lot of work into it, but that's just my critique or feedback to what I would like to see is more compact districts, meaning more circlish and square, and that a community of interest for me is East Side. And I don't believe, especially, they would never divide the 8th district. They would never divide Riverfront. Those would not happen in those type areas. So we should not divide East Side.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Carrera.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did want to comment that there is a program, and Councilwoman Darby can circle back, that she shared with me that she's been using for the maps. And you can include the street names on that if that makes it easier obviously it will make it easier to understand. So that's out there. Maybe she can share that information and we all have accessibility to it and can play around. The second thing is I do agree, because when I looked at the way that the maps that it's drawn now, you see these little cutouts here and there. And I'm sure there may have been a reason or something of common sense for that. Or again, the things that have happened historically, the gerrymandering, the drawing the lines accordingly, cutting out an opponent. I was just reading about, how we do that here. Not so much, for the dividing the Republicans and the Democrats. So it would be nice to see lines that are drawn more, understandable. Like you have a square, you see that is that area. I know that not everything might fit that way, but the natural boundaries that exist. The other comment I will make, it is true. Some of these districts and some of these areas are being represented not just by 2, but by 3 council members, so that it's too much like common sense if you are able to draw the boundaries and keep them geographically together. But I know there's some other things that go into play when this is done. This is my first time involved. So, we're learning. I am, and maybe other council members as well, but to do this as fair and transparent as possible. I do agree. Let's really look at this and not be cutting out all these weird, cookie shaped stars and cutouts, and keep it cleaner and keep it divided a little cleaner. I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields. Councilmember Fields.
Okay, my mute wasn't it wasn't working. Thank you, Council President. I just want to say, Council Member Harley, because we represent the same neighborhood, and the way that you did the streets, I appreciate that. Because see, what people don't understand or they don't realize, if you don't live over here, you can't tell me about here. So we have West Center City that you and I both divide. So the way that you cut it, the way that you did the streets, that still gives me West Center City to represent. And then it gives you Trinity Vicinity to represent. So I get the cookie cutting and I get the weird, the octagons, the squares, the stars, I get all of that. But when you start cutting up a community that's together, whether you want it in a square or not, you're cutting into a sense of community. So, I get it. There's always a new way to do things. And, everybody feels like, okay, everything just needs to be changed. And I'm not saying change is not good. Everybody needs to adjust to change. But what I will say is this: when you start doing when you're not thinking of that particular community because you're not familiar with that community, then that's when you start making it hard for that person that represents that particular district. So all I'm going to say is I understand where everybody's coming from, but I have to agree with Councilmember Harley. I do like it. I made a map and my map was nothing like yours. I went over because I had no clue of what I'm doing. And I guess that's where I'm about to get to. None of us know what we're doing. People doing stuff figuring out stuff online. What we need to do, just my suggestion, because everybody was able to make a suggestion. I think that we need to have someone that has been doing this for years, that has a background in redistricting. That's just my suggestion. I mean, you can still have a committee, but my suggestion is to actually have someone come in and what is it called? Just come in and help us do what we need to do. Because I see now that we're gonna have to have more meetings than just the 2 that you have on the screen. Thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you. Council Committee Member Darby.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add, I know Councilwoman Cabrera mentioned that there's a system. So as council people, there are systems that you can use, like the community called Days Redistricting, where you can go in and draw maps and you can see the streets and lines. I have met with a few council people, so if anyone wants to meet, I can help you with that. Secondly, I also have met with community people in almost every single district. So I meet with people who are East Side leaders, West Side leaders, over South Bridge, over North Side, asking them like, what are your thoughts? What do you think? Meeting with community leaders. I have went to workshops. So I'm not just talking, and I have met with the ACLU. I met with the League of Women Voters. So there's no excuse to say that you don't know when the information and resources are out there, where there's community organizers, community leaders, and so many resources out there that can help you put you in the right way to what are some common practices to redistricting and getting opinions and feedback from the community and community organizations. So I want to point that out, that that's exactly what I'm doing, talking to community leaders, community organizations, getting feedback. I don't know everything, but what I'm doing is I'm speaking to the people who do know and making sure I'm getting educated about it and not waiting to be educated on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. I'm sorry, Councilmember Spadola. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Council President Congo. I agree with Councilmember Fields. This is the blind leading the blind right now. And I believe we, because we knew that, we budgeted a line item in our budget to provide for pay for some professional help for this. So I'll touch base with Chief of Staff Walker and see where we are on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilwoman Darby had shared with me the tool that she's using, and it is an internet tool, and you can do almost anything with it. And I think Councilwoman Cabrera brought that up also. That is a strength and something you can play with and get, and they give you all the data. They make it for the city that you want the information on. So it's specifically for Wilmington. Also, staff has suggested to me that I bring someone in from a different jurisdiction to discuss how they handle redistricting. So on October 6th and the intergovernmental committee meeting, there will be a representative from the county. Council Michael Migliori, and he has done this in previous years. In fact, he used to work for the city, but it's just an example of how things can be done. So I would hope everyone would come to that meeting just to hear an example. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee Member Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate everyone's feedback. That's what these committee meetings are all about. I will say, number one, I definitely reached out to those that have done this before. And once you, it's numbers, it's basically numbers, and it is definitely something that can easily be accomplished if you are focused on exactly what needs to be done. So using tools that were online, using a common sense approach, looking at numbers, what needs to be added, what needs to be reduced to get to a particular number. And I'm not saying this in a negative, it's definitely not rocket science. It really isn't. Those district council members that are engaged, that are at meetings, that are on calls and utilize the resources, we are the ones that know the communities best. We are the ones that know those communities. Again, one of my goals when I first started was to talk about keeping communities cohesive, not interrupting new communities. Now, we all know that the city limits are but so big. I want to speak to the fact of how to not divide and try to keep communities together. The city limits are but so our boundaries are limited. And at this point in time where we are, unless the city of Wilmington extends our boundaries, okay, we are going to have 2 representatives, more than likely, in several districts. And it has all to do with the fact that the boundary lines are but so big. Now, I really respect my council member that is passionate, and I respect everybody's opinion, and I think everybody knows that. But her particular district is limited in terms of, where she can move out. The 1st and the 2nd district is limited. They cannot move west because of the county boundary line. As it relates to, again, the east side does need a lot of love, just like the west side, just like the 2nd district. Most of our Black and brown communities, the east side is no different than what's going on in the second district in terms of the second district, Black and brown communities needing love. On the west side, brown and Black and communities needing love, and on the east side. So I just want to say that at this point in time, until the city of Wilmington can extend our boundary lines, it's going to be almost impossible to have one council person per community. I mean, none of us can do anything about what has already been done as it relates to the boundaries of our city. So currently you have 2 brown and Black representatives that represent the east side, and that we do collaborate, we do listen, we do work with our colleagues and the administration to do our best to make sure that the east side gets what it needs. And I work with my 5th district council member, Councilmember Fields, Councilmember Oliver, 3 brown and Black women that we're talking about with these particular boundary lines moving. And I believe that both of them are passionate about their areas that we share. So for the public, are we perfect? No, we're not perfect. But if you really look at our record, you will see that we're out there, we're advocating for our Black and our brown, as well as our white counterparts. Now, because the brown and Black topic came up is why I'm speaking to that. But we are out there, we're doing our best, and we can do more, and we are going to do more. And we are talking about how we can uplift and work better together to bring more equity, more equality. We're at the Bancroft School meetings. We're at the Civic Association meetings. We're at the MPC meetings. We're at the community meetings. We are on the ground and we are listening to our constituents. So again, I respect everyone's opinion. I want to say this is not rocket science. As it relates to the lines, I requested a map that had the street names on it. For whatever reason, I made it clear earlier that you can't see the names on the map. It would be nice if we had the names. That is why I was very transparent with sharing the names of the streets. And again, I know it's for going forward, for today and going forward, but that was one of the reasons why I mentioned the names of the streets to be transparent. And I do think that it's easier for us to be able to look at the maps with the street names on them and fully understand what we're trying to do. So my last comment is that with this particular proposal, it would bring the 4th district in compliance to not going over the 5%. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Committee Member Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to echo with my colleagues. All districts do need some assistance. As she stated, since we brought up the color in the 3rd district, it's no different with the high murder rate in the 2nd as it is in the 3rd. Shooting is all over the city, all over the nation, but I don't want anyone to think that Councilman Hardy and myself are not working hard in our communities. We were just out recently lighting up the east side, where we're constantly working over here and throughout the whole district. So I don't know, misinterpretation or misuse of language, but as she stated, this is just about getting to your number. And I don't think it is a rock scientist. And I've looked at some of the programs and talked to several people who have done this redistricting for a long, long time. And I too share that we are Black and brown women working together, making it happen for the community. So I'll wait till we get to my map. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was looking at the map, and I definitely understand, like, I guess the reasons for the boundaries and such. The only question I actually had was, it didn't look like much actually happened to 7th district. I didn't know whether or not I was reading incorrectly. I tell you what, it's taking a long time for my laptop to load up these colors or something. So, like I stated, I wasn't certain whether or not it was coming in clear, but it didn't really look like the 7th district had much of any type of changes. So I just wanted to be clear whether or not that was actually adjustment done on that map we were just looking at.
Okay, thank you. Marshall Basnight, please.
Yes, and for that particular map, the 7th district was not adjusted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Committee Member Oliver, did you have another
Yes,
comment?
yes, I'm sorry. I had, someone had knocked on the door. I too agree with my council members. It is money in the budget. And I do agree with Fields that it wouldn't hurt to, and you know, Council President, we had this discussion the other day. It wouldn't hurt to have somebody come in and maybe not pay them the full amount, but just to come in because they specialize in doing these maps, have done them for years, just as a person, just not that nobody can't figure this out, but just for a neutral person. So it just keeps a little clarity and just keeps some clarity. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised from the public or any council or committee members. So at this time, Council Committee Member Oliver, did you want to go over your proposal?
Sure, thank you. Yes, and Councilman Hardy, we said we was gonna sit down and have a meeting, and Darby, we didn't get a chance to connect on that call. But nevertheless, I'm looking at my proposal for the 3rd district. Was looking at, I have the one that's up for Walnut Street, that goes down Walnut Street because I am short. So I was interested in moving on the other side of Walnut Street down. That would be 13th, down to 16th and Walnut, over on the side with Barbara Walsham, across from the horse stable. On that side of Walnut Street to enter into some of those homes over there. And also that was one proposal from Walnut Street back. And the other proposal would have been, it should have been one on the east side. I don't see that one.
Councilwoman Oliver, the Department of Elections is going to share the map as you're talking.
Okay, I appreciate it because remember I'm on my telephone. Okay.
Well, it seems to have been disabled. So I'm unable to share anything at the moment.
Okay, I can speak on it, and this is not going to be our last meeting. We have to several months ago. I'm looking at North Walnut Street, all the way down to 16th, not on, that would be between Walnut and French Street, the homes right there. Also, I suggested Lombard Street. Councilman Harwell, we kind of connect the same idea when I looked at Lombard Street to Taylor Street and back to Church Street. That was also a suggestion. And lastly, I went up to King Street, 9th Street back. So it would be, it was only that apartment building right there that had 100 people, and straight back the rest were businesses, and stay on the side of the state building and straight down to Walnut Street, which would take me down to Evelyn's. And most of that are just, I guess, cleaners. It's a big empty parking lot. But the only thing I said was that was just the 3rd suggestion. And it would just keep it, it made the number over, I think that would be like 900 and something people. And it would still put me in that 5% because I was short quite a few people. And Harley, I will be, maybe we can connect tomorrow and sit down and look at your map again and look at mine, because I think we coincide, kind of thinking the same thing I say. And that was it.
Okay, thank you, Committee
Thank you.
Member Oliver.
Thank
Are there any comments from any other committee or council members or the public? Please raise your hand if so. Or any of our other panelists. All right, seeing none. Again, thank you, Committee Member Oliver. This time we're going to go to Council Member Fields. I believe you have two proposals.
Yes, I do. I'm not going to present the first proposal, and I'm going to say that because I was just speaking, I was just talking about lines and different things that I didn't even consider the numbers. I was just really looking at the lines. I was just playing with the map, honestly, and I really had no clue that it was going to be presented tonight at this meeting. So I'm going to go to the second proposal. Can you pull that up?
Department of Elections, if you can pull up the second proposal, is CMBF number 2.
Okay, is it up? Okay, yeah, it's up. So can you make it a little bit bigger for me, please? All right. All right. Come down over, we're gonna go on the east side of 95. So come down. Okay, so as you can see currently, where the red dotted lines are, that is actually, is that my, yeah, that's where my district is. So in conversations with the Councilwoman Harley, her and I, we agreed again that West Center City should be kind of kept together. So is this the map? This is not it. Is this it? Because I thought it went to the left side of 95.
This is plan number 2, proposal number 2. The one
okay.
that, okay.
Let me see.
That's it, council member. It is.
This is it. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the lines right now, you have me right there on the left side of 8th Street. And we had talked about me moving to 9th Street on the left-hand side. And then, so that would be from Adams. So what's that? That's 9th and Adams, right there by 95, 9th and Adams, all the way down to West Street. So that's what we were talking about, but just on the left-hand side, not on the right-hand side. Am I correct, Council Member Harley?
Yes, it went down a little further than west.
Oh, I get Tatnall. Okay, here's the thing. I'm not all. I'm going a little bit out. I'm not.
Just say what you're saying. You ain't got.
Yeah, because I'm not.
Just
so come on
verbally
down. So we were going from. I think we said Tatnall Street. I was going to go from what? I was going to go from
Adams
all the way down to Tatnall Street. From 9th all the way over to 2nd.
9th to 2nd or 9th to 8th?
Well, my map will go all the way over. It's going to come all the way down. Right?
So, oh, well, hold on. I don't want to be out of order.
Go ahead, you can. I mean, well, go ahead. You got, go ahead, President Conga.
Yes, Committee Member Harley.
Okay, so I believe we want to talk about east and west and north and south. So the north and south boundary lines, north and south would be between 8th and 9th. That's the north, and the south, 8th and 9th. The west and the east, with west starting with Adams, and then going east to Tatnall, so that's it. So it's only between 8th and 9th, the borderline between 8th and 9th, north and south, east and west, Adams to Tatnall. So Second Street is not a part of this particular proposal.
But the end of, okay, but the end of, if you look, the end of Second Street is right there. So Second and Tatnall, it hits. So that's why I said from, from 9th all the way to Second, because you got Adams to Tatnall, second to 9th. Because I got all of Second Street. So that's where okay, so the whole gist of this map was to keep the communities together, because one side of West Street is West Center City, Quaker Hill, and then the other side of West Street is Quaker Hill as well. So it was no need to keep that divided when I can, put all of those people into one particular district and instead of having it separated. That was the whole idea for that.
Mr. President.
I'm sorry. Who was that?
It's just me. I'm trying to raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, yes, Council Member, Committee Member Oliver.
Thank you. So, Councilwoman Begita, you're just talking about the Quaker here. When you say Second Street, you're talking about by the fire station right there. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's all.
okay.
It's all zeros anyway. If you look at the numbers, it's nothing there. It's all zeros. That's why I said just move it, coming straight down Second.
Right by I just wanted to, I'm just marking my notes. You're talking right there, the fire station. You already have them high rises there. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's all I was saying. And
Yeah,
then,
okay.
So then, that's all, because it's all, I already have, what is that? Where that 22 is right there on Lancaster Avenue. Wait a minute, no, I don't have that. But right there on Second Street, I have the other side of Second Street. So this is where I'm going at is this. I'm trying to keep my district together. I'm trying to keep my communities together. And that is my whole point of moving the lines. Now, if Councilwoman Harley don't agree, we can always have a conversation to move it up because we got to fix the numbers, or we have to see where it goes. This is just a preliminary. Like I said, some people say it's not rocket science, and you're right, but I can't do your job and you can't do mine. So at the end of the day, I'm just saying that, I just played around with the map. I wasn't all analytical, and I wasn't looking at that. I wasn't doing that. I was just playing with the map, and I had no idea that the map was going to be actually where I had to present it today. But because I'm an analytical person, the next meeting I will have everything, the numbers and all of that set out. So don't worry about it. And I know I kind of fumbled over this map, but I got you next time. So right now, this is just a preliminary map, how I'm feeling, how I think that my district should stay. Or just move over a little bit. I'm not asking for a lot. I just want my district to stay together. I need my communities to stay together. I don't want to split them up. Thank you, Council President.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fields. Marshall Bassanite, please.
And I just wanted to mention to Councilwoman Fields, because she reached out to me a couple times. And I just wanted to share, based upon what you said and what you did on your with your second proposal. I mean, it brings your 5th district. It is within range. It's within like 188 under if you factor in the inmates at the last known address. So, I mean, I just wanted to say that what you did, it did make sense. It does balance out.
Okay, thank you. That's all I was trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from any committee or council members? Or anyone from the public?
I have my hand up, Mr. President.
Okay, Committee Member Harley.
Yeah, so Council Member Fields, that's completely fine with me. I appreciate your efforts, and we're striving to do the same thing. So I just wanted you to know that it is fine, and thank you for sharing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands raised, we are going to move on to Committee Member Darby.
Thank you, Council President. So my map, I guess we could bring it up and then I could talk about it. But I can start over. One of the things specifically in the 2nd district that I wanted to see different is that North Market Street is a boundary line
And it's divided between, I'm talking about the second half. Well, I guess the first half, depending on what part you're coming in. But if you're coming from in town into north side of Wilmington, Market Street is the boundary line between the second and third. So I had drew maps with either the third district or the second district taking over both sides of North Market Street. North Market Street is a DDD, a downtown development district. It's supposed to be included in that. It needs a lot of concentration. It needs a lot of, I just really feel like divided communities, divided streets do not get the representation that they need when it comes to like development, when it comes to having like a political voice or leverage. So I think it's really important that North Market Street somehow, some way, I haven't really figured out, like, don't take my streets for like finalized, but I was just playing with, I have like 10 maps. So I just submitted one of them, but kind of either put in North Market Street on both sides into the second district or into the third district. So that was one of the things. And I also want to preface before I keep going that when I talk about the districts, I'm not thinking about the work that current council people are doing. I am talking strictly about numbers, boundaries, and communities of interest. So I am not attacking anyone personally about their advocacy in their district. What I am doing, I do not call the second district my district. I do not think of any district as being owned by any council person or that you have some type of ownership or like final mastery say over that district. So when I'm talking of the districts, I'm going to talk of them in numbers. And I just want to preface that because I don't want anyone to feel attacked as I'm suggesting things and they're saying that, oh, I do this in my community. I'm not attacking you personally. This is about the map and the numbers. So if we can pull back out so I can see the whole map. I don't even know which one I submitted. But I know North Market Street was one of the big things in the second district, third district that I really want to have a conversation about. Another piece that I already hit on was really East Side becoming one community. It's a small community. Of course, every single community cannot be represented in one district. Like West Side is huge, right? We know West Side and it's very diverse. However, the community of East Side is a very common community of interest, right? So like those type of communities should be together, right? And that's just not based on the historical history of what council people have been there and representing there, because I'm not getting personal, none of that. I'm just talking about lines. I'm talking about what needs to be drawn and communities of interest. So we looked at East Side becoming a part of the third district. And in my map, I took out Howard, the prison. I took the population out already on my map. I don't know if they did it when they converted to this system. And I took it out over in the first district. So I don't know if that reflects that. And then if we go over to like the West Side over here, it was really funky where the lines were really not compact. So standards for redistricting, standards across the state for making sure that we're creating districts that are equitable, districts that are common sense, is to make them compact. That's the term that they use. And that's either like more circle-ish, which we really can't do here, but like more squarish, not like a perfect square, of course, right? But basing that as much as possible, as close to that, so that it's not all over the place and looks like a shape, like some octagon, I don't know, some weird shape. I don't remember the name of the shapes with all these different sides. But over here in the West Side, I kind of played with the lines and the numbers, and I have certain meetings with different community leaders and council people to kind of go over what are some community of interest that I may be cutting into, what can we do to move that. And when I readjusted this, the only problem I had was, I think with the 8th district, I think they needed a little bit more people. So I'm still playing around with the map. But yeah, that's my map. And I think I said a lot already about my thoughts on map drawing and some of the workshops. And I talked to the ACLU, I talked to a representative from the NAACP. I talked to the League of Women Voters. So I got a lot of feedback and recommendation, but I still have a long way to go because I'm still waiting to meet with a few council people and some community leaders and go to a few more workshops about redistricting. But other than that, I can open it up for questions, comments, feedback.
Okay, thank you, Committee Member Darby. Do any, I see Councilman Johnson?
Yes, and again, similar to my kudos for Councilwoman Harley, I appreciate you know the work with the math, Councilwoman Darby, as that is not my strong suit, and so I think you know we're at least moving the ball forward, and I think some of the lines actually make sense, and they're not as jagged. So you know I think this is definitely a good start. It's a good start. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee Member Oliver.
Yes, Council, excuse me, Councilwoman Darby. I'll give you a call when we finish up so we can sit down and talk.
Thank you. Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We didn't get a chance to connect, but I'm looking at your map. It looks like you did finally address one of the areas that had the lower numbers in there. And I did realize that because of the fact that the 7th district is kind of to the side and really doesn't have anywhere else to go, that those numbers are probably going to be pulled from my area or somewhere else. So we definitely can have that conversation. Also, I did notice you got rid of 5th district's panhandle. I thought that was funny. So I'm like, I look forward to for us to connect so we can take a better look at the map.
Okay, thank you. Committee Member Harley.
Yes, I just want to make one point, and that is this, is that make no mistake that having one council person representing one district does not mean that it's going to mean progress. In my mind, you know, we all have the right of way to have our opinions and how we look at things. In most cases, 2 is better than 1. In most cases, not every case, but when you have 2 people advocating for the same community, I do think that there could be a better outcome versus 1 representative being totally overwhelmed, because we do have at-large council members that if we had it structured where an at-large council member work with 2 district council members on a regular basis, maybe something like that would be more productive. It maybe something like that would add more value. But as it stands today, you have council members in a district, you can have 1, and it doesn't mean better, it doesn't mean more, and it doesn't mean that that's the solution. So we got to be careful about some of the ways that we think about, and I'm not talking about anybody in particularly, I'm just speaking in general, that sometimes, in most cases, 2 is better than 1, especially if you have people that are working towards the same goal. And I do believe as much as possible, wherever we can keep the cohesiveness, wherever it is possible. I think that is what matters. And I do believe that what matters is no matter who gets in or what communities come together, it's all about the person working for the people, regardless of how it's divided or whatever way it looks. What's most important is that we're out there, not we, but whomever is elected is out there doing their best for the people and representing them the best that they can. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields. Councilmember Fields.
I'm sorry, I was trying to get to the screen. What I would like to say is I get the training and I get all of that. And I thank Councilwoman Darby for taking the time out to go and make 10 maps. And I think I'm gonna probably make more maps once I figure this, once I, get a hold of the tool that you so-called use. But I'm going to continue to state it, and I'm going to continue to say it. I don't care what they say, how they say it. My community and my community leaders and the people that I live around don't want their district this way. And then how am I supposed to represent the 5th district and my address is in what, the 4th? So I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure. I don't, and I know you're just playing with the lines and you're trying to figure it out. But I would say, we have to look at this and make sense of it. Sometimes always reading a book is not going to give you the answer. You got to do the work to get the right answer. So I'm just going to say this, we got time to keep doing these proposals, but it just doesn't make sense to me right now how I would be in the 4th district, but I'm supposed to be representing the 5th district. So that's all I have to say. But here's the thing, Councilwoman Darby won't even have to talk about it online. I can give you a call. We can have a meeting. We can discuss it.
Council President, can I respond just to one thing?
Yes, Council Committee Member Darby.
Yes, so I want to say that I don't think of people's addresses when I am drawing district lines. That is not something that you're supposed to do. That is called buddy Mandarin. Buddy Mandarin is illegal. So when I'm drawing lines, I'm not thinking of if your address is in that line or not. When I'm drawing lines, I'm not looking at anyone's address. I don't care where anyone lives. So when I'm drawing these lines, I'm not thinking about your address. That's something that the city is going to have to figure out what they're going to do if people's addresses don't fit in their districts or if there's more than 2 people. This is not about your address. This is about the community. That's what it's about. So adding that part about your address, really that piece didn't matter to me, but the community is of interest. I am interested in keeping them together, but your address doesn't matter. And I want to say that to everybody, I'm not thinking of anybody's address when I'm drawing lines.
Mr. President, can I speak?
First, I'm going to go to Council Member Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that I do agree that as we're thinking about this redistricting, that it's not personal about who the individual, it's about how the community has grown and to have that representation. My original comment is to thank the council members. Councilwoman Harley did reach out to me. Councilwoman Darby did reach out to me to discuss their plan, the map, and the common sense and the sense that they used in coming up with the numbers. So I was going to commend the work that has been done. None of us are experts at this. This is all very, very confusing. And I think that when we have the meetings in person, it will be easier, as our Deputy Chief of Staff, Marshall Bass-Knight, said, because now we can actually look at the pictures and actually have a hard copy in front of us. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. The lines were drawn, and I'm hearing both councilmen. My hand was up before the comments were made. But yes, that sometimes happens. People do get cut out depending on the actual elected leaders. But again, none of these maps are in stone. We're all working on this together. It's a work in progress. And I think that we'll be able to come up with something that's good and maybe have that independent person to also help us so that it's not political. But I just want to commend the work that has been done. And I appreciate being included by my council sisters when they did reach out to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to remind all council members, including our committee members, to please keep all comments towards the maps and not anything personal as we move forward with our comments. If there are any discussions that need to be made one-on-one, please do that offline. This time I'm going to go to Council Member Darby. I'm sorry, Council Member McCoy. Councilmember McCoy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My question basically was, as I have been reached out by my council colleagues that, to ask about the map. I do realize I was already within my 5%, but also knowing that the 7th district actually needed to make some adjustments. are only the committee members able to make maps? As a person who's already been here for one term and worked pretty much almost in every part of this city, I'm more than happy to help out if they need it. I got a chance to actually ask the questions when it comes to what my borders look like and what those streets look like, just so I can know what the numbers were in case someone needed to, more input or advice when it came to what sixth district looked like. So I just wanted to make you aware that I'm capable of helping.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm Marshall Bassnight.
Oh, I just wanted to say too, Councilwoman McCoy, I mean, if you have any suggestions as well, I mean, although you're not a committee member, as a council person, you can still submit a proposal, no different than anyone from the public can as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I just want to emphasize the last part of Ms. Bassanite's statement. We also want to encourage anyone from the public that if you have any suggestions during this process, please contact us at City Council at 576-2140. If you know our emails, you can do that as well. And we will direct those suggestions to the Department of Elections so that you are definitely going to be included in this process. All right, seeing no other hands raised from the public or from any council members or committee members.
You skipped over me, Council President.
Okay, Council Member Fields.
Yes, I just thank you. I just had one more comment. And I get the lines being drawn in the squares. I'm gonna keep saying this, and I know it may not be about where I live at, but where I live at is where I was born and raised, and it is the same community that you're cutting out. So you're cutting the community in half. You're not putting the entire community in there. The community is being cut. So that's all I'm saying. Like you said, it don't matter where I live, but to you, it doesn't matter. But to me, as just a member that lives, just a person that lives in this community, you're cutting me out of the community of people that I've grown up with, that I've worked with, that, that we have a common ground on what needs to be done throughout the 5th district and West Center City and alone. So you may not care about where somebody lives, and I get that, and it's against the law, however you want to say it. But what I'm saying is the line, you're still cutting up a community. You're not keeping the communities together. The line is actually breaking them up. And I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's just to the lines. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So at this time, I'm going to go to Marshall Bassnight.
Yeah, just one point too. Councilwoman Darby, I did share with you too, with your proposal too, that with the 2nd district, that it increases that beyond the percentage, and you were supposed to eventually share another change. So I just wanted to, make sure that we know that.
Yes, I can speak.
Yes, Committee Member Darby.
Yeah, I didn't get time to share the other map, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so this is just a rough draft. This is the first time we got till February 3rd, and I got plenty of people to meet with, so it will look different in the next month or so anyway. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that this is an ongoing process. These are only proposals. And again, if you have any concerns, especially any personal concerns, please handle them offline. We want to continue to present ourselves as being professional and doing our due diligence. And we are not going to entertain any type of personal attacks. So please keep that in mind. Committee Member Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank everyone for their comments. I think for the most part, this was a great discussion. That's what this platform and this meeting is for us to talk about the work that we're doing. I just want to also offer, if there's any committee members or council members that would like to reach out to me for any kind of help as it relates to the concept, in terms of the work that we're doing, because once you get the concept, then you can roll with it. So if anybody chooses or would like to reach out for any kind of help or support in concept, and in terms of how all this works, I am more than happy to help and support as a committee member. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, Committee Member Hartley. At this time, we are going to move to upcoming committee dates. Marshall, did you want to handle that? You would like me to? Okay. So right now, our next two official committee dates are Thursday, October the 28th at 5 p.m. and Monday, November the 22nd, also at 5 p.m. And as needed, we will give proper notice if any meetings will be added to that schedule, either before that, in between those meetings, or afterwards. So again, we will give proper notice. There will not be any surprise last minute meetings. We will give proper notice according to FOIA. Right now, we'll move to other business from any committee members. Committee Member Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I heard October the 28th. I didn't hear you say November the what? I'm sorry. I didn't hear the other date.
Yes, Thursday, October the 28th at 5 p.m. and also Monday, November the 22nd at 5 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to thank everyone from the public who has engaged with us and has been listening in virtually. I want to open up the floor to anyone who wants to give any feedback from anyone in the public. Please raise your hands if you have any comment. Seeing none, yet I want to thank everyone, council members, committee members, all of our panelists from this evening for just helping us with this process. Again, we are all learning. It's going to be an ongoing process. Really, I just want to thank those members who gave us their proposals. Want to encourage other council members to do the same, and especially the public. If you want to be more engaged, please let us know. Please call us at 576-2140. Also, you are welcome to be in council chambers at the city county building to be in the meeting also. If you prefer that, or if you prefer to be virtual, you can continue to do that as well. And also, as a reminder, all of our next scheduled meetings, all of the committee members will be required to be in council chambers. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
night.
Bye.
Good night.